With us as we move next to the Middle East for our next update. And Iran has accused Israel of attempting to undermine its national unity after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu publicly backed the ongoing protests across the Islamic Republic. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baqai said Israel and the United States were inciting violence, warning that external actors were seeking to exploit unrest to sow division inside the country. Let's take a listen in.
رژیم صهیونیستی مترصد سوء استفاده از هر فرصتی برای تفرقه انگیزی و برای هدف قرار دادن انسجام ملی این رو باید بسیار مراقبت کرد. اقداماتی یا اظهاراتی که امثال نخست وزیر رژیم صهیونیستی یا برخی از مقام‌های رادیکال آمریکایی، مقام‌های تندرو آمریکایی در رابطه با مباحث داخلی ایران مطرح می‌کنند در قاموس بین‌الملل چیزی نیست جز ترغیب به خشونت، ترغیب به تروریسم، ترغیب به
The protests, which began over economic grievances last week, have rapidly expanded nationwide. Human rights groups say at least 20 protesters have been killed and around 1,000 people arrested, with demonstrations reported in more than 220 locations across 26 provinces. Netanyahu said Israel identifies with the Iranian people's struggle for freedom, calling the moment potentially historic. Ross joins us once again. Ross, of course, these protests have now expanded across the entire country. The Iranian people, of course, have toppled governments and regimes before, most notably in 1979. What do you think of these protests? Does the Iranian government genuinely fear destabilization here?
Certainly they fear destabilization, but they fear destabilization even when there's no protests going on. This is a government that tightly controls information flow to the best of its ability, controls the meetings, controls opposition gatherings, et cetera, et cetera. So this government is always on the lookout for any threats to its power. Yes, there is a history of overthrowing governments, most notably in 1979, as you mentioned. On the other hand, over the past 20 plus years, there's been at least 10 major protests of varying popularity or mass popularity across the country, some smaller, some much larger. But every time, unfortunately for the people of Iran, the government has maintained control, and very often they do use force, including lethal force. They jail people, they execute people. And now they're using another one of their frequent tools, which is the foreign boogeyman. So it's a habit of this government to blame the UK, to blame the US, or to blame Israel for whatever problems they have, usually the problems of their own making, economic mismanagement, corruption, the reason why they are sanctioned because of their ridiculous attempt to develop nuclear weapons. This is all their own doing, but one of their tools they use is to blame foreigners as well, so no surprise that they're trying that again. Will the outcome be different this time? It's too early to tell. Some of those past protests in the course of recent years have been very large, and it looked like the government's grip on power was weakening, but every time they've been able to survive.
And Ross, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu, with his messaging, is consistently separating the Iranian government from the Iranian people. Does Netanyahu's public support for protesters help them, or does it strengthen the regime's narrative of these external plots that you talk about?
I don't think it helps the regime. You know, they have their core supporters. So when the regime says that foreigners are interfering, whether it's the US, UK, Israel, or others, the core supporters are going to believe the government and stand behind it. The protesters, they're probably not looking for support from Israel. They have a long list of grievances, which are well known, whether that's economic mismanagement, corruption, or repression. So they don't need any message from Prime Minister Netanyahu to explain to the Iranian people why the government should be overthrown or why they're taking to the streets to protest. So in some ways, it's also for domestic consumption in Israel. as well. Netanyahu wants the people of Israel to know that he is a player in regional politics. And to some extent, that's true. Coming after events last year in 2025, the defeat of Hamas, the defeat of Hezbollah, the bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities. But Netanyahu also has to firm up his domestic political position as well. So it's no surprise that he also wants to tell a domestic audience that I'm relevant when it comes to regional politics.
And of course, the crisis that Iran are currently facing, a huge economic crisis caused by sanctions, and of course a huge water crisis in Tehran in particular, where the city might even run out of water. How do you see the Iranian government tackling these crises? The will of the Iranian protesters isn't going to go away unless that these issues are addressed. How do you see them being so?
They can't address it over the long term. So in the short term, like the previous protests in recent decades, the government might be able to successfully end the protest, no matter how many people they have to kill or jail. But over the medium to the long term, a government as corrupt as this, as incompetent as this, that prioritizes rewarding insiders who are close to the government, they're not going to solve the country's problems. Those problems will continue to exist and they will continue to worsen, which means even if this round of protests is repressed, there will be future rounds of protests because the government is just that disliked and that incompetent.
Ross Feingold, stay with us as we have some further news coming in up next. And as